The first hint of trouble wasn't the squeal of tires or the howling of dogs. It was the grating sound of metal scraping against concrete at 6:30 in the morning. Half awake and barely coherent, I dragged myself out of bed, shuffled to the window, and nearly spat out my coffee. There, at the end of my driveway, sat 3 enormous concrete barriers, each about 4 feet tall, looking as smug as uninvited relatives crashing a quiet dinner. My truck, my prized possession, was trapped inside the driveway. I blinked hard, hoping this was some weird, sleep-deprived mirage. It wasn't. Before I could wrap my head around the madness, my neighbor Lisa appeared, clipboard in hand, sporting a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Of course, it had to be Lisa. She adjusted her oversized sunglasses and waved like she'd just handed me a winning lottery ticket. "Good morning, Tom," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I noticed some issues with your driveway and had to act fast. This is for your own good." My own good? My jaw tightened so hard I could have crushed pecans with it. I stormed outside in my slippers, the cold concrete biting at my feet. "Are you serious?" I snapped. "You blocked my driveway with concrete slabs." "Who does that?" Lisa's smile grew even wider. "I did you a favor," she said, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. "I've been reviewing property rules, and I spotted some concerns about your driveway stability. We had to step in before something awful happened. You get it, right?" "Oh, I got it." I got that she'd lost her mind. I paced back and forth, rubbing my face in disbelief. My morning had started with a simple to-do list. Fix some cars at my shop, timing belts, brake jobs, maybe grab lunch with Emily if I had time. Now my biggest problem was figuring out how to move half a ton of concrete off my property. "You can't just block my driveway," I growled. Lisa tilted her sunglasses down, clearly reveling in my frustration. "Actually," she said with a smirk, "under HOA rules, I have full authority to enact emergency safety measures." She tapped her clipboard like it was a holy relic. "Don't worry, I've already notified contractors to check the unstable ground under your driveway. It's all for your benefit." I knew what this was really about. Lisa had been waging a silent war against my garage for months. She called my clients thugs, complained my tools were an eyesore, and once tried to fine me for leaving my lawnmower out for a day. This concrete nonsense wasn't about safety, it was about power. "You'll regret this," I warned. "Oh, I doubt it," she replied cheerfully, strolling back to her pristine lawn like she'd just brokered world peace. By noon, my phone was buzzing with bad news. Contractors refused to touch the barriers. Lisa's HOA clout had spooked them. The city wouldn't step in either, citing civil dispute rules. Meanwhile, my customers were canceling appointments left and right. The only thing keeping me from financial disaster was 4 feet of smug concrete. That evening, Emily showed up with her laptop and a 6-pack of energy drinks. Emily was the neighborhood's unofficial troubleshooter, sharp-witted, fearless, and a wizard at uncovering dirt. If anyone could take Lisa down, it was her. "Looks like Lisa's been busy," Emily said, eyes locked on her screen. "Did you know she's been shuffling HOA funds like a casino hustler? Landscaping, new patio furniture, all community upgrades." She clicked on a shady invoice. "Oh, and guess who owns the concrete company that dumped those slabs in your driveway? Her cousin." "That can't be legal," I muttered. "It's Lisa," Emily shot back. "She doesn't care about legal." We brainstormed for hours, exposing her at the next HOA meeting, hiring a backhoe to lose the barriers. None of it felt airtight. Lisa had built her empire of control carefully, twisting rules to her advantage. The next morning, things escalated. Lisa had rallied her HOA minions, circulating a petition to limit Tom's garage activity for the sake of neighborhood harmony. I couldn't believe it. Half the neighbors signed, convinced my shop was a crime den. Then came the knockout punch, a letter taped to my door. Effective immediately, Lisa had filed a motion to ban commercial vehicle activity in the neighborhood. Translation: my customers couldn't even park nearby. She'd crushed my business without breaking a single law. For the first time in years, I felt helpless. I sat on my porch, defeated, staring at the concrete monstrosities that now defined my property. Emily plopped down beside me, typing furiously. "There's got to be something," she muttered. I laughed darkly. "You can't beat someone like her. She's too cunning." Emily grinned. "So let's get craftier." That night, we didn't just plot. We hashed a full-on counterstrike. Emily called a friend who tracked financial records, while I rallied my old mechanic buddies, guys who knew forklifts, chains, and every trick to shift concrete. We weren't just moving the barriers. We were unraveling Lisa's web, piece by piece. By midnight, Emily had struck gold. Lisa had faked the report about my driveway's instability. The ground was fine, no risk at all. Better yet, she'd funneled HOA cash straight to her cousin's company. It was textbook corruption. The trick was exposing her without getting ourselves sued, arrested, or painted as the villains. Lisa was a master at spinning perception, and her loyalists were blindly devoted. Tomorrow, Emily said with confidence, we take this to the HOA meeting. But first, we grabbed flashlights, gloves, and bolt cutters. With my mechanic pals on standby, we quietly rolled a forklift onto my property. The operator hooked chains to the barriers, and with a low rumble, we lifted them, one by one, off my land. Watching those smug slabs swing into the air felt like poetry. Lisa's fortress, her petty power play, crumbled before my eyes. But as the last block rose, a light sliced through the dark. Lisa stood on her porch, phone in hand, finger poised over the camera. "You're finished, Tom," she sneered. And just like that, things got uglier. The next morning felt like walking into a war zone. Lisa's smug mug was all over the neighborhood group chat, paired with blurry shots of me and my crew hauling the concrete away. She'd spun it as vandalism, claiming I'd jeopardized public safety and threatened the community. The comments were brutal. Half the neighbors cheered her on, convinced I was a reckless troublemaker. Worse, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting that night. I knew her plan: humiliate me, lock in her narrative, and solidify her grip on power. Emily arrived at noon, laptop tucked under her arm, energy drink in hand. "I've been digging," she announced before I could speak. "Lisa's deeper in this mess than we thought." She plopped onto my couch, cracked her drink, and typed like a woman possessed. "That driveway report she filed? Bogus. The inspector's signature doesn't match city records. And that concrete company? Her cousin's. She's been siphoning HOA funds to pay for her own projects. Your driveway, Mrs. Carter's patio, even that tacky water feature last summer, all labeled as emergency fixes. She's pocketing thousands." I stared at the screen, a mix of thrill and dread surging through me. "We've got proof. This could end her." "Hold up," Emily warned. "We've got evidence, but Lisa's slippery. If we're not ready, she'll play the martyr. We need something big, something public." I rubbed my temples. "Tonight's meeting. If we nail her there, she's got nowhere to hide." "Exactly," Emily agreed. "But we need a fallback, just in case." That afternoon, Emily tracked down a real city inspector, a gruff guy who muttered about HOA nonsense as he paced my property with a clipboard. After 10 minutes of poking around, he shook his head. "Driveway's solid," he said flatly. "No cracks, no issues. This unstable ground claim? Total garbage." I grinned. "Can you write that down?" He scribbled a note, tore it off, and handed it to me. "You bet." Armed with the inspector's report and Emily's stack of financial dirt, I felt a spark of hope. Lisa didn't play fair, though. She'd have a nasty surprise waiting. Still, I clung to the chance that truth might actually win. That night, the community center hummed with tension. Nearly everyone showed up, eager for the drama Lisa had teed up. She stood up front, clipboard in hand, smug as ever. When I walked in, her grin widened like a predator spotting dinner. Tom," she cooed, "glad you're here. I was just about to explain how you endangered us all by tampering with vital safety measures." My fists clenched, but Emily squeezed my arm. "Let her talk," she whispered. "Let her dig her own grave." Lisa launched into a theatrical rant about unstable foundations and how my reckless actions threatened the neighborhood. She even squeezed out a few tears, claiming she'd acted out of pure concern. People nodded, some clapped. Lisa was weaving her web flawlessly. Then it was my turn. I stood, cleared my throat, and faced the crowd. "Lisa says my driveway's unsafe," I started, "but here's what a city inspector found." I held up the report, reading it loud and clear. No structural problems, no unstable ground. Lisa's safety excuse was a sham. The room buzzed, but Lisa jumped in, syrupy as ever. Tom, I was just being cautious. Better safe than sorry. I didn't let her off. Funny, because her cousin owns the company that dropped those barriers, and HOA funds paid for it. Emily projected Lisa's financial records on a screen. She's been using our money for her cousin's business, her patio, even that gaudy fountain out front. Gasps rippled through the room. Neighbors who'd once adored Lisa started whispering. Her face paled as she fumbled with her clipboard, like she could erase the proof. That's out of context, she stammered. These were approved upgrades. You forged signatures, Emily fired back, including the inspectors who condemned Tom's driveway. Lisa's face went scarlet, her voice shrill. Ridiculous. You can't prove that. Oh, we can, Emily said, handing the fake report to the real inspector, who stood up. I never signed this, he declared. This is fraud. The room exploded. Some demanded Lisa's resignation. Others wanted HOA refunds. Her composure shattered. She flailed, accusing everyone of conspiring against her. By the end, she was ousted from the HOA, facing fraud charges and friendless. As I left, neighbors patted my back, shaking my hand. Emily grinned like she'd won the lottery. Well, she said, that went nicely. I laughed. Yeah, but Lisa's not done yet. Sure enough, the next morning, a small cement gnome appeared at my driveway's edge, middle finger raised toward my garage. I cracked up. Emily nearly fell over laughing. You know, she giggled. That's almost clever. I nodded, still chuckling. Almost. Lisa's downfall should have felt like a clean win, but something nagged at me. She wasn't the type to vanish quietly, too stubborn, too spiteful. For a few days, she lurked around, no longer barking orders, just watching from her window or pacing her yard, phone to her ear. It was like she was scheming. Emily called it her brewing face, the calm before the storm. Then the letters started. Typed envelopes landed on doorsteps, filled with wild tales. Lisa claimed she'd been framed, that I'd faked the documents, bribed the inspector, and roped Emily into my plot. Absurdly, some neighbors bought it. Her loyalists whispered I'd cheated the system, that my garage was illegally zoned. I knew Lisa was behind every word. One morning, my mailbox was gone, just a hole in the ground and drag marks. Emily's was toppled, and Mrs. Carter swore she'd seen Lisa with a sledgehammer. Petty, sure, but Lisa wasn't finished. A week later, I woke to flashing lights, 2 cop cars and a city zoning official in my driveway. We got a complaint, the official said. This property's violating commercial operation rules. I knew who'd called. The inspector poked around my garage, checking tools and setup. After 15 minutes, he sighed. Everything's fine. Just a home garage with extra gear. Someone's wasting my time. He glanced at Lisa's house as he left. She watched from her window, not smug, determined. That night, Emily came over, laptop in tow. She's plotting, she muttered, scrolling through records. It didn't take long to find it. Lisa had filed an HOA motion, despite being ousted, for an emergency vote to ban commercial-grade equipment on private property. If it passed, my lift, compressor, and welder would be outlawed. She couldn't win with zoning, so she'd rewrite the rules. She's relentless, I said. She'd rather ruin everyone than admit defeat. Emily grinned. Then we outsmart her. We rallied neighbors, explaining Lisa's tricks and how her rule would hit their hobbies too: woodworking, gardening, brewing. I went door to door with flyers. My mechanic pals spread the word. People saw Lisa for the control freak she was. At the vote, the community center was packed. Lisa handed out pamphlets, preaching about hazards and property values. Her fans nodded. Then Emily took the floor, calm and cutting. She laid out Lisa's scams, fund misuse, fake reports, this spiteful vote. She doesn't care about safety, Emily finished. She wants control. The room went silent. Lisa babbled defenses, but no one bought it. Her motion tanked. She stormed out, slamming the door. That should have been it. But 2 nights later, I heard a clatter. I ran out. Lisa, in black, bolted from my garage, bolt cutters in hand. My lift's cable was cut. If I hadn't caught it, it could have collapsed mid-use. The cops came, but Lisa played asleep. Emily wanted charges. I knew Lisa'd wiggle free. Instead, I got creative. With my pals, we moved her gnome to her porch, added a pink tutu, glittered its finger, and ringed it with flamingos and shades. Emily filmed it. Lisa's concrete karma. It went viral. Weeks later, the neighborhood relaxed. My garage boomed, thanks to the video. People waved again. The mailman smiled. Lisa's house sat empty. She'd moved. Then a letter arrived. You think you've won. Watch your back. No signature, but I knew. Odd stuff followed. My garage door jammed. Power cut mid-job. Then real damage. My shop trashed. Tools everywhere. A glittery pink brick left behind. No proof, but Lisa's mark was clear. Emily wouldn't let it slide. She wants dirty? We'll go dirtier. She found Lisa's new house online, bragging about a fountain bought with old HOA cash. We drove there, live-streamed the tale, barriers, harassment, fraud, by that fountain. It blew up. Lisa's new neighbors turned on her. Her rep tanked. 2 weeks later, a woman entered my garage. I'm Ellen, Lisa's old assistant, she said. I'm sorry. I knew she was wrong but stayed quiet. She paused. She's leaving the state. Tired of small-minded people. I nodded. Need help here? I'm good with paperwork. I smiled. Yeah, I could use that. Ellen smoothed things out. Emily pitched in, picking up mechanic skills. My garage became a hub again. The gnome stayed, dressed up seasonally, a symbol of defiance. Lisa was gone, my shop thrived, and peace returned. That's what mattered.